all these governments and important people are there, so the security is nuts. Somehow, through the events, Luke and I end up in the VIP tent. There was a moment of just turning around and locking eyes with the one and only Steven Spielberg. And I was like bumping Luke's shoulder. I was like, is that Steven Spielberg over there? And he's like, yeah. And Tom Hanks is right next to him. And I was like, holy crap, dude. Like, this is insane. And it made so much sense, of course, that they're there. And so now we're like, oh my gosh, not only is this video going to introduce the president of the United freaking States, Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg are maybe going to see it. We had no idea if they were going to be in the crowd. And the event starts, and we see them sitting in the front row. And so we're waiting, we're watching, and then...
Michael Hartman, thanks for being a part of the podcast today. I appreciate you making time for this.
I'm so pumped to be on a show with you, dude. I'm a longtime friend of yours, also a fan of the channel, so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we met, I guess 8 years ago on the set of Overcomer with the Kendrick brothers in Georgia. And I can't believe it's been 8 years, baby. Almost a decade. Yeah, we're pushing a decade.
It feels crazy to think about, like, just periods of life being so far, like, removed from where we are. There was, like, that trend recently of the 2016, like, post yourself from 2016. Like, that's 10 years ago. And it's crazy to think that, like, in my mind are just, like, so many visceral memories of doing stuff with you and, like, just hanging out and being on set and, like, just, it's crazy to think that was that long ago. But I think that's, like, part of, like, filmmaking in a lot of senses. Like, you get so close to people so quickly that, like, those memories, at least for me, I don't know if it's the same for you or for others, but, like, those memories become so much deeper and more, like, I said the word visceral already, but I think it fits. Like, it becomes that for me, to where I can't, like, it's such a surprise, but, like, that's insane that's that long ago. But yeah,
it feels just like yesterday. Yeah. And I mean, we were together for 6 or 7 weeks, something like that. And, in the trenches, the heat, long days
sweating
on the
through
stage,
my pants, every day.
Wrangling, background extras and just, locking off doorways and stuff. And so, I'm glad we're able to have a conversation together. And obviously, like we were just saying before we started, in the last 7 or 8 years, where both of us are now since then, and the life experiences we've learned and the projects we've been able to work on, and, just that much further down the road. So I'm excited to have this conversation and just talk about, a couple key things that you've been a part of. And so, just, I guess, jumping right into that, for those that don't know or haven't, aren't aware, kind of one of the main things I want to talk to you about was the D-Day celebration project that you worked on, which I guess is almost 2 years ago now, coming up in June, which I guess was for the 80th D-Day celebration, correct? And so, this was obviously a team effort. It was you and 3 or 4 others, right? Something like that.
Yep. Well, small team, but scattered.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm looking for today is just to get your insight for the roles you played on that project, some of the things that you learned, and we'll take it in stages. I've got some questions here for you about it. But I guess for those who don't know about it, just kind of explain what that project was and maybe even how how it came to be.
So my background, I am right now a producer at an agency in Virginia. And we get a lot of different projects that come through our doors, a lot of corporate work, a lot of sometimes industrial, sometimes a little bit of government as well. And that was what this project was. We had, I think, a previous relationship with someone who introduced us to the ABMC, who's the client, American Battle Monuments Commission. And every 5 years, they put on this massive event in Normandy. It's a celebration on honoring like the presidents, both the sitting presidents of the United States and France always are there, so it's just a humongous deal. And so when it came across, like I say, came across our desk, like that happens. When it came across our email, like we were just like, yeah, we should definitely jump on this. And Pinkston, the company that I work at, it's not just video production. So it was like a humongous campaign. Our bread and butter is PR, public relations. That's what we built, for the last 20 years. I wasn't a part of that, but they have built an amazing PR company. It sounds like a pitch. It's just preamble, I promise. But part of the campaign that we were tasked with was not just video production, but also thinking about how are we going to pitch this to news outlets. It was organizing. I think it was like 1,000+ different media coverage people at this event, and our team was tasked with like, hey, we're going to wrangle that and get all these hits and everything.
Wow.
So obviously the part that everyone is probably interested in, if they're listening to this, is the video production aspect. And so we didn't really have like a set number, I don't think, going in. I think maybe we had an idea of doing 4 to 6 end deliverable videos. But our task was to tell the stories of these veterans before we can't anymore. And like, even that statement is just, it gives me like chills just thinking about that, of like, your job is to tell someone's story because they're not going to be around in 5, 6, 7 years. The next D-Day 85, 70% of the people that we're interviewing, or the 70% of the veterans, like, they're not going to be here because majority of them are 99, 100 years old, which is just insane. It's crazy. And so it's like a little bit of a blend of nervousness, but also immense excitement about what that could mean. And so the people that we were working with were, just really helpful in that process of identifying those veterans for us through past relationships that they've had. And so we just kind of hit the ground running. We had, I think, a year from when we first got that contract to produce these documentaries before we were going to go to Normandy in June of the next year. And so we started, we did a lot of pre-production to sort of plan what we wanted these videos to feel like and what we wanted them to look like, and how we wanted how we wanted audiences to react when they saw it. And ironically, I'm looking at a Tron Legacy poster, but the word that was floating through everyone's mind is legacy, like remembering them. And that drove every decision that we made in pre-production and production and post-production, is telling these stories in a way that truly lives up to this idea of what it means to have a legacy. And so I can keep rambling on. I'm happy to do that, but if you want to just sort of drive it in a direction, I'm certainly willing to.
Yes. No. So let me just jump in. I guess, in the pre-production, did you guys begin to create like a mood board, or did you have a style that you decided you were going to go this direction for how you wanted it to look and feel, even from obviously editing, the grade, and then also how things were lit especially for the interviews?
So my role for these, whenever you're a part of a small team, you kind of wear a lot of hats. It's a classic sort of skeleton crew thing. But on the pre-production side, I just sort of played this role of producer. So Colin Osbury was kind of our key in the creative. I would almost consider just him like the director of this project. I don't know if he would disagree with that, but I know that in the pre-production process, we had a Milanote board. I don't know if you guys have heard of Milanote, but it's an amazing tool. We use it all the time for pre-production. And it was just images, ideas, quotes, just a bunch of different things. I'll see if I can get some screenshots of that. And when we got closer to production, we even had like lighting diagrams. We got some stills from different people of the different places or facilities that we're going to be filming, and just sort of doing pre-production because we didn't have the budget or the time or the whatever to go and actually scout and come back and plan. So it was just kind of a get there and figure it out kind of a situation. But in the actual sort of planning phase, we did as much as we could, right? And a lot of these things you don't want to, or we didn't have the opportunity to do like pre-interviews with these individuals. One, I think it's because of their age, and it was just, you really only get one shot to interview them for 2 hours, which is about how long each interview was. And so in a lot of ways we went in dry. So we had a small team for some of these, and I was able to go on 2 out of the 4 shoots, so I can only speak to the 2 that I was on. But after seeing the films and working on them for so much, it can kind of fill in a lot of those blanks.
Yeah,
but
right.
For most of the shoots, it was a team of 3 or 4. We had Colin sort of directing. One of our client individual folks, they did all the interviewing because he had like a military background and also really wanted to do that. And then we usually had 1 or 2 people just kind of playing like swing positions. One was more on the grip and electric side, just sort of working with lighting. And then we had a DP. So it was really a small, super small team for each one. I wish we had a little bit more help, but I think in the end, when we were just really filming a lot of interviews and stylized B-roll, sometimes the extra stuff does actually get in the way of just, doing what you need to do to get what you need to get, if that makes sense. Sometimes just going too far slows you down, and you don't actually get as much as you need. You don't get enough contextualization. You don't get enough visualization of the different things that you need to show or you would like to show. And so well, sorry to interrupt you, just jumping in there. I mean, a lot of the setups, the interviews, the B-roll, I mean, to me it all felt like it was planned, and it was very intentional. It didn't feel like, I mean, to some degree it was run and gun, I guess, maybe a little bit, but you guys definitely had a plan going into it. I mean, it sounds like it was, you did as much as you could, and you had a good balance, and you just did the best that you could with the time you had. And I think it looked great. And to me, that kind of balance is sometimes my favorite. It can be a little uncomfortable in the moment because you're just like, I hope we're actually kind of nailing this, because maybe we couldn't, location scout or get into conversations ahead of time. But at the same time, I think it can sometimes produce an image or a result that is sometimes just as intriguing. That's a great way to think about it. And it really reminds me of just like the importance of on-set creative collaboration. And that's like multiplied by like an undeniably or an undefinable amount when those people are your friends and when you trust them and you've worked with them before. And I think on most of these, it was Colin, myself, and then Luke Fletcher. All of these guys have YouTube channels, by the way, if you want to check them out. But Luke was our DP for almost all of these, except for a few. So maybe like 2 out of the 4. He was also in Normandy with us. But when you're on a set or a location that you've never been to before, all 3 of our brains were like, just like, what if we shot from this way? And like and so it's like the multiplication factor of all of our creativity and experience combined really gives you the confidence to sort of set up an interview look and be like, this is pretty much exactly what we could do, or this is like the best we could do in the time that we were given and like what we have, you know? And that's an experience that I hate, but I love it looking back on it, because it's like, it's just so impressive. Not like a boastful way. It's just impressive to think about how we're able to walk into a space, look at it, and be like, okay, what would benefit the story? How do we achieve this technically? And then creatively, like, what do we need to do to make it happen? And I stink at it, but when I do it with another person who also feels like they stink at it, like, maybe we're not so bad. You know,
make something
maybe
great.
We'll do okay. And that's an experience that, I don't necessarily encourage, but I think you're going to find yourself in that place naturally as you just are a filmmaker, or you spend time on set that isn't scripted. It's more like verite style, where you're just kind of finding it. You're finding what you're supposed to be doing there. And I know that sounds abstract, but that's what you kind of have to do when you don't know what the interview is going to give you, like you need to listen and engage with that interview so that your B-roll can benefit the story afterward. At least if you're doing this kind of documentary testimonial style of video, particularly. We had no script. We just had like words. We had ideas. We had emotions we wanted to sort of trigger different ways that we were working, if that makes sense. And so that
so when you get, sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to interrupt you. When you guys were looking to, get everything shot, especially the interviews and all this, how much time did you guys allow for the interviews before you guys were actually able to get the B-roll? Because obviously, like, it was probably a staged process, A, B, C. You're working through getting this first and next. What was the order like for that?
Yeah, so each one was pretty different from the next. So we did 4 interviews, or we did 4 stories, and then we produced a couple of other like supplementary deliverables. So out of those 4, I was on 2 of them, like I said, and for those 2, the first one, we actually didn't get that much B-roll. We were at a retirement home, and so it was the Armed Forces retirement home in D.C., which was kind of cool. So we were able to just kind of be in my hometown. I didn't have to get on a plane. I just had to drive 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's neat.
But that location was pretty cool. So we were able to get some B-roll that was a little less. He had a couple of different pieces of memorabilia. Each person did, and that's kind of what we focused on, is like filming whatever memorabilia that they had, and then trying to build some scenes day of that would really fit the bill. And to the degree that we could, again, in pre-production, we had some cool ideas going in based off of some, call it mood boards or inspiration. In one of the ones that I'm thinking of where we filmed this gentleman named Harry Miller, I had this idea of like, what if because we heard that they had a theater in the retirement home. It's like, what if we put him in the theater chair and have him like watch some of not his footage, but footage from that day. That's not something that's like new. People have done that before, but it was one of those things where we planned it and we were actually able to like one-to-one just be like, okay, yep, got that shot in like 20 seconds. Awesome. Now we have more time to go get random stuff. And that was like the only thing that we were able to actually plan, is because that's all the information we were given. Is like, we have a really cool library and a theater. It's like, okay, what else do we got? But, we normally, to continue off of what you asked me originally, is the structure of the day was normally we would start with the interview. Whenever I produce things, I always like to start with the interview if we can, just because it's like the backbone of the rest of the day of everything. Sometimes you can't, whatever. So we spent like 2 hours, I would say, with most of these guys, just asking them questions, like going through, and we had a question sheet, but I think for the most part it was just kind of this flow of story. These guys have story after story after story after story, and so
I'm sure
it was quite a long interview. Some were 3 hours, which was insane for our hard drives, but it was pretty cool. But
because you were doing a multi-camera interview too,
yeah,
right?
I think we had like 3 cameras for each one, which isn't crazy. We weren't trying to go overboard, but we were trying to think about it as like, we need like a wide shot, we need a tight shot, and then let's just try and get like a unique sort of angle for this, and that worked out pretty well. We were able to get some good coverage. But then after the interviews, for some of the ones that I was on, we went up to their room. Both of the gentlemen that I was with were both at different retirement homes, and they had just some crazy stuff. Like, he had just like a binder of photographs and clippings. And so if you watch the films, you'll see like those shots of him. Like, we were able to film his reactions, like sort of talking about what each thing was. We had like a straight on shot and over the shoulder shot of that. One of the guys had like I don't know what kind of caliber it was, but one of those like artillery guns. He had a 45-pound like bullet basically that he was very, very proud of. And it's just allowed for like, not just cool shots, but you don't get to see this stuff outside of museums or behind glass. You know, we had like an authentic, I was able to touch, I probably shouldn't have, but this authentic Nazi flag with blood stains on it, and like it was signed by his whole battalion, and he was just like,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I stole this from like whatever. And I was like, huh, okay, pretty cool. And I mean, it's just, it's wild to think about that, actually, like revisiting those memories of just being able to film some of that memorabilia. And you know, it sounds really simple to say, but that's all we really needed was a couple of heroic visualization shots of these pieces of memorabilia, but also we did our best to get some portraiture of these individuals. You know, we have some like push-ins on them. And I think that was key to really the main like wow factor of some of these films, which was the fact that some of these guys were going to meet us in June in Normandy, and we were going to be able to kind of get some shots of them, not just talking about what they went through on those beaches, but actually get them on the grounds in Normandy, walking through
That'd be insane.
the crosses.
That'd be insane.
And I think it turned out pretty well. Some of them didn't get to actually make it, but we had a couple of guys, and we were able to film.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that was just one thing I want to ask you too, is what it was like to just work with guys who were at D-Day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane because they are getting far and few between. I don't know that I've met anyone from D-Day. I have met a guy who was a bomber pilot in the Pacific. And I saw some guys that were from the Doolittle raid speaking. I didn't get to meet them. I mean, they're all gone now.
Yeah.
And so what was that like, just getting to sit down and be in the same room with these guys?
You know, I don't come from a background of like much military. None of my family was in the military, to my knowledge. You know, none of my immediate family's in the military. And so it was very new to me. Just, I had some family friends and whatnot, you know, but just being surrounded by that was very new to me. And it was, I don't know what the word is, but it was certainly moving to be with these gentlemen who just clearly had a different perspective and experience on life because of what they had gone through.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And that's like a duh. Like, I mean, of course they do, but you don't think about it unless you're exposed to it in that way. And the biggest surprise, and maybe it was just because of some of the guys we were with, was how like mobile and active they were. We had one guy, he was 99, would get up halfway like during the interview and do like toe touches because he was just, like stretching. And I was like, don't do that. You're gonna break in half, man. And he was like, I do this every day, son. And then you just would like keep on going.
He's like, this is how I made it through the war.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So like literally 3 out of the 4, 2 of those, 3 of them were actual veterans. One of them was the son of a veteran. So out of those veterans, 2 of them were like, let's do this, baby, walking and like skipping along. One of them was definitely a little bit more, you know, had to be in a wheelchair, and his, you know, family was pushing him around. But I don't know what it was, but I just got this sense of patience from them that I hadn't experienced from, I've done a lot of interviews. Like most of the interviews are like, are we done with this? Can I go home now? Like these guys are like old. They don't want to, but they were just, maybe it's because of the material that we were talking about. They were just so willing to engage and interact and be a part of this. And anytime they talked about Normandy or being there, like it always, in every single one of them, triggered an emotional response of,
I'm sure, yeah,
like how impactful that was for them, of course. And it just like absolutely was just this wave that emanated from them onto the rest of us, onto the crew, and all of us, like, I think at some point had an emotional response, whether it was like quietness or tears or whatever. And that just changes you, and that to us, I don't want to speak for those guys, but for me at least, it just gave me an extra push to be like, what we are doing is so important, not for the sake of my own like networking or portfolio. Like, I don't give a crap about my portfolio. This is, and I think somebody on our client team said this, it's like, this is a piece of history, which is really crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And it gives you this just drive to do this as best as you can, no matter if the budget's not big enough, you're tired, you're hungry, it gives you that. I mean, that's what I would say, is just immense motivation to do it right.
Well, it is a huge part of history, and while they were back in the 40s at that end of history, you're now at this part of their life, of their history, being able to sort of expose it in a way that is new and fresh. And that's something that in another 50 years it's going to be like hugely valuable. And you were a part of something like that. And that was something I guess I was curious too, just from the interview perspective. And I know you weren't the one actually doing or conducting the interview, but I was just curious, like, how much they actually were willing to open up, and were the questions having to be shaped or re-asked, or were they just so willing to talk that they just gave you everything you needed really quickly?
Yeah, they certainly, to my memory and the experience that I had, none of them ever were like, I don't want to answer that question. It was, I'm sure they had their own way of like sort of driving it to the direction they wanted to. But again, it's just such a unique perspective that my question is really just a means for them to say something.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like I said, like, what is your favorite car? And they're like, when I was 14, I was driving. It's like, awesome. Like, that's what I want, So I honestly, like, the experience that I had was they were super willing to share with us, because I think of the work that we had done in the relationship building up to that point, to share what we were doing and why we were doing it, which really does sort of, again, remind you of how important it is to do your prep work and plan. Because if we just kind of went in there as, we want to film you, and had no plan, it's not really easy to describe to these guys whose time is more valuable than mine, for more reasons than one, to be able to have a clear, whatever it is, like it's a word or a thought, an idea, or a, campaign, like what's your main thing or whatever. It's important to have that, because you're able to help them help you in a way to sort of guide that question. Because I would say that, we never got them to, they never said anything that was like, oh, that wasn't the answer I wanted. But they certainly like knew how to like follow a trail to its end, man. Like, we were like back in elementary schools, and we're like, we need to like focus on, it's like, it's been an hour and a half and that we're still like not even drafted at this point. So like, let's get on with it.
They're still in the 30s. They're not even whatever it was in 40.
Yeah. But I mean, it's, looking back on it, it's,
that's incredible.
I'm good with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's something, for you to, tell your kids and grandkids someday. I mean, it's kind of one of those historical projects that's definitely, soon to be once in a lifetime for some of these guys, because they're not around. And so being able to do that is getting far and few between.
Yeah, for sure, dude.
So on this project, you already said you were the producer. You did wear a couple of other hats kind of through this whole process. What were a couple of other roles that you had?
Yeah, I produced pretty much all of them. Some more than others, in the sense of like, I was just like a booker. I was booking flights, hotels, lodging, getting the crew together, memos, packets, all that stuff. Some of them I was actually doing like call sheets, and it was a crew of 3, so a call sheet was really like a text message, but still.
Hey, still need it.
Still need it. For 2 of these, I played the role of gaffer, which was really exciting for me. Most of the time I do just have to play this producer role, hire the crew, and just sort of watch and let them be creative and have fun. But for this, we were scrappy, and we needed somebody to sort of fill the role. And I don't know, I've dabbled around on Roger Deakins forum before. No, I'm just kidding. But like I have a like immense interest in lighting. I always have, and got to stretch my legs doing a couple of grip gigs and electric gigs. So I wouldn't call myself like a gaffer proper of like knowing voltages and all that stuff. But it was really fun to work with our DP Luke on trying to see what his vision was and what he wanted the scene to feel like. And we thankfully had like a ton of fixtures to play with and work with. So not to say that more lights was better, but the location that we were in was this large library for one of them, huge like bay windows. And the sun wasn't really doing what we wanted it to do, which was kind of like cascade in through. So we set up like 4 600Ds all through like the windows. I think we made like a lighting diagram of this. I'll see if I can find it. We just like punched them all through the windows to get this like huge room lift. And then we just lit the shelves and had this ginormous like overhead key with like, it's just the craziest setup I've ever seen in my life in a library of all places. But it was really fun to just sort of be on the camera side for once, honestly, and at least the electric side or whatever you want to call it. But being able to shape how something really comes across on camera. Of course, it's like the DP's job to sort of carry that vision, but a lot of ways being able to, okay, how do we make this actually happen is what I was able to do in that position. And I did that again on another one where we filmed in a theater, which was really fun.
Yeah, those look really nice.
That one was really fun to do. And I think the one that I probably spent way too much time planning for, because we actually got some really good like scout images from someone. So we were able to kind of finesse it almost perfectly. We didn't use any like 3D modeling tools or anything that are out now. But, you know, we just did basic lighting diagrams and planning of where do we want the key and where do we like, what do we want the field to be? And so that one is really cool to just from a visual standpoint, not just like a storytelling standpoint. They all look incredible, but that one was really fun to just, again, be a part of building the visual palette of some of these and not just be like a paperwork pusher or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's normally what I do is just like kind of build from the outside, and I never really get to get my hands dirty too much. And so that was probably one of my favorite parts of this project. And then the last hat that I wore was, I have a background in sound design, is really where I got my start in film production, was sound. And so when we were putting these together, one of the main deliverables was this kind of compilation of all of these different interviews in the flagship piece that was going to play in D-Day, or not in D-Day, in Normandy on D-Day, in front of an audience of like 15,000 people.
Let alone like the streaming.
Yeah, every news outlet in the world, or in the United States at least, put it live. And so it was like,
that's crazy.
These better like look good and sound, which we found out like way too late in the game. We were just kind of like, oh, these will go on YouTube or whatever. It's no, man, these are going like
the world is going to see these,
brother. Yeah. So when we found that out, it was like, you know, Colin was doing a majority of the edit. He did all of the editing for this, but for that one specifically, he was like, maybe you can get your hands on it to sort of see if we can sort of build it in a way that's a little bit more punchier than the other ones. Because the other ones are very much like testimonial documentary. They have a nice flow to them. This one, we really wanted there to be a different kind of energy around how it was perceived from an audience perspective. And that was really fun because we have a studio at Pinkston that, you know, we just have like giant speakers and like a really good setup in there. And so I was able to just spend a couple of days, because we didn't have that much time before we actually had to get on a plane and go there, to just sort of finesse it and make it as good as possible in the time that we had. And so that was pretty cool, being able to just put my, like, some of the experiences that I've had in the filmmaking world kind of like all into one project, which is like a very at that level, at least, is a very rare thing to do.
Yeah. Do you feel like that, because you had to wear 3 different roles or 3 different hats throughout the project, that you kind of walked away from it with more, just a better, well-rounded experience? I mean, you know how to do all these different things, but then you're having to kind of incorporate them onto one project that is a pretty big project. I'm sure when it started, you weren't expecting to wear maybe those roles, those hats.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely wouldn't. I would definitely consider myself like a unicorn in the sense of I'm able to do a lot of different things, but obviously nobody can do all of those things at the same time, right? So you kind of have to pick and choose what it is that you're going to do. And unfortunately, what that means is also you're never going to be like, I don't know, the best at that thing, because you're just kind of like a well-rounded circle. You're not going to be like, I only do this and I will never do the other thing. That being said, it kind of goes back to this idea that I mentioned earlier of the creative collaboration of all of us recognizing that we did not have the luxury of being particular. Like Luke, our DP, he's amazing at camera, but he's also amazing at lighting, as he should be if he's a DP, right? He's also like really good at just talking to people. And so that was just something that we, that's just not the only things he's good at, but you kind of go down the list of, Colin's an amazing editor. He's not just an amazing, director or cinematographer. He's also a really good editor. It's like, okay, cool. So we can slot him into the edit. And so it's like, Michael's really good at sound design. He's also got a really good way of thinking about like producing. I don't know if that's true. I'm just kind of
I'm sure. That up. I'm sure you are.
Whatever. But you know what I mean? It's just all of us kind of came to the project with that in mind. So it wasn't a surprise when it was like, hey, can you go jump on? It's like, cool, got it. I'll set up the boom. You go make sure this guy's here. We get this shot of this. And so we were able to maximize our different skills to the best that we could, because it was, again, like I said, I think it was just, we had to push as hard as possible on these because of just how important they were. We just had to try. I don't know if you should certainly try that on every project because it may bite you in the butt. But where you can and where it really sort of matters, and sometimes you don't know. And for this, I don't think we even knew, because again, we didn't really know or understand the level of exposure that this would have when we were like shooting them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We just knew that they were important. But we didn't know that when we got there, seeing the like rows and rows of chairs that like you could not see the end of was insane.
It's crazy.
And when all the people were there the day of, we're like sweating bullets. It's like, oh my gosh, like this better be good, dude. So it's just,
it's
crazy.
I guess I do want to talk to you about, I guess you could say, the premiere. I mean, of the showing of that. But I guess one quick question though is, from the time you did the interviews to the end of the last B-roll you guys got, what was that time frame like? Was this like all within a month?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So capturing the interviews was probably 6 months. Just scattered across different windows of availability. I don't know the exact timing, but I think that's what it kind of ended up being, was we just had like 6 months to sort of go and film.
Because you said you had about a year kind of notice, more or less, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I think so. If memory serves me correctly, I don't feel like we felt tight on time, like, oh my gosh, we have to go and get these. It was more like, we have enough time to go and film these as as much as we could. And then the unique part about this was we were going to meet some of these guys in Normandy for D-Day when these were supposed to premiere. And so we built, Colin was really, really good at doing this. He built the whole video and placed like strategic gaps in the film where it was like, here's where we're going to get this shot of this person walking through the crosses, and like doing our best to sort of like dream up what we wanted these shots to be. And so when we got on the plane, Colin was like editing the whole time. Poor dude, like edited for hours. Like he had to detox like afterward. So crazy. But we were editing like on the plane while we were there. We were editing when we were on the ground in Normandy. Like we were filming when we were there. It was nuts. So we had all these films, but we also had different deliverables while we were there. So we were filming as much as we could while we were there to fill in and finalize these videos, which we're going to release every day up until D-Day, which is when we would drop the flagship and it would premiere and then we would throw it online. So we dropped like each testimonial documentary one at a time, and we were like, okay, George is going to be here on Thursday. Like we got to get these shots on Thursday so the video can go up on Friday. And then it just like continued on. So it was very stressful.
Yeah, no kidding.
Probably, yeah, very much for Colin. He was just like in the chair. Like that's, again, he did not get up. He did not come help us shoot. Like he was just editing. And we would not have ever been able to do it without his like dedication to that project. Because again, he felt probably would say the same thing. It's just like these were so important that he was willing to like stretch the days. And I mean, it was
that's
tough.
a lot.
It was really
that's
hard.
A lot.
But,
how far before the actual D-Day were you guys there? Were you there like a week or a couple weeks?
I think we were there for 10 days. If I remember, we were in Normandy for 10 days, probably about a week before, I think a week before D-Day. And that was just to get different, you know, there's tons of programming that happened throughout the cemetery all the time. And we had a plan of wanting to just get you know, environmental shots of the cemetery. We wanted to get shots of people there. There was different events and different people coming to visit. It was a big ordeal. But that was also because of, again, the other things that our team at Pinkston was doing. You know, we had like, I don't remember how many people, probably like a team of 10 with us from the Pinkston side, doing all the media, organizing people and signing them in, giving them badges and credentials, telling them where they can go, where their their setup was or whatever. That was a massive undertaking. And we were also managing the team that was doing the like broadcast stream, like the live stream, which was, I really wish I was able to spend more time with them because they had the craziest filmmaking stuff. Like they had a little truck that just like drove around. Like
That's
it was
crazy.
It's great. Like a team of 30, they built their own like lodging. It was weird. It was wild. They were there for like 3 weeks to get it all ready. But we were there for a good long while, which was a good time.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, definitely some memories that are incredible.
Yeah, I was definitely ready to go home after a while. I was like, okay, it's time to go on home to the United States, baby. But
so
it was certainly a
no doubt. That'd be insane. When it came to like shooting at the cemetery and just some of the stuff locally there, did you guys have to deal with permit stuff, or was it fairly loose when it came to that?
Yeah, it's definitely not loose at all. It's very rigid, but because our client was, you know, they're the people that made that place, we had unrestricted access to anything that we wanted. Cool. We could go anywhere whenever we wanted, as long as we had somebody with us. Which again, thinking about it, is just one of these things that not very many people will get to experience, of just being like, we want to be in this spot at this, you know, stone at this time for this shot. Like outside of maybe like Steven Spielberg,
right, yeah.
Like, I don't know of anyone else who, like, there's probably a lot of different shoots that happen there, but
it is more unprecedented
it's just
access,
one of those things where, I mean, walking around with other people, no one else, unless you're like an armed service person, or, you know, you have like a connection, you're not going to get onto the grass. At least that's to my knowledge of what I was seeing there. You know, there was a couple of people walking onto the grass, but they are just so like strict about the preservation and you know, you've probably seen it, like the straightness of each one, and you know how they clean them. And so you can't just have people walking around all the time. And it's just like a very solemn, quiet experience if you've ever been to like a memorial of that size. So it was very, very humbling to just be able to stand there and capture some of the stuff that we were able to capture. And I definitely will not, I will never, I don't think ever take that for granted. I don't think I can. I shouldn't, at least.
Well, yeah, and the fact that you're working on a project like that, you're able to be in the location that it happened for these guys, and some of these guys are still alive, and even a couple of them are there. I mean, that's just an insane full circle project that basically no one ever gets to actually experience, and not just from like the cool factor, but like you said, from the history and just the bigness of it all, and kind of that legacy impact is what an opportunity.
Yeah, it is. I was, when you asked me to do this episode with you, I just went back and I watched all the different episodes, and what hit me really hard amongst a lot of different things was just seeing, just like experiencing, like, how did we do this? Like, how did we get not like the technicals part of it, but just the way the thing like came together is just like outside of us. Like the way that, the ideas of, hey, let's like shoot half of it now and then like finish it
like the last 6 days
like,
of
I don't know who came
up until
yeah, like I don't know who came up with that, or if that was like from the beginning. I can ask my team, whoever came up with that idea, but it's just one of those things where I can't put my finger on like how do we pull this off and how do we do this. It's just a very, very humbling thing to be able to look back and say.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Sure. Absolutely. So you've gotten all the interviews, you've gotten all the B-roll. Colin's been hustling, getting these edits done, burning the midnight oil. What was it like for you guys as a team to be there as things are going to play, especially for like the finale piece? Kind of walk me through that experience that day and kind of what was going on.
Yeah. So,
and I want to interrupt you too. What's funny is, this is just a side note, I was in Paris. I had a layover in Paris when you were there. And I saw you post, and I was like, because it was D-Day. So I was in like the Air France lounge in the Paris airport with my buddy who had access to it. So he's like, okay, come on.
Sure.
And I'm like, sipping on some I don't know, free really good coffee that was just way better than whatever you get in the plane.
Hot dog.
And we're just watching it live, and then I look at like your story because it was on the TVs in the lounge, and then you posted. Well, yours probably did show, but I just meant like the actual event was live. And so we were watching, and then you posted on your story, and I was like, what? And like, I'm like an hour from you right now.
That's awesome.
So it's just like, it's just kind of dude, I wanted to get out of the airport and go over there so bad. But anyways, I just want to interject that.
That's crazy. I had no idea. I mean, we spent, after D-Day was over, we actually went and did like a little bit of a holiday in Paris and just kind of enjoyed that time. That's crazy. I had no idea that like I had a blood brother nearby outside of the couple that I was with.
And crazy enough too, I had another friend that was there as well in the audience in those chairs. Another friend.
Oh, nice.
Her father, because her grandfather had jumped in on D-Day, and so her father, she's about my age, and they were there in the audience. So I had her and her dad there, which I know, and then you guys were there, and I was like, dude, I'm like getting major FOMO right now. Like,
well, I'll tell you, from being on the inside of like, again, having the access that we had, I do not wish upon anyone like what you would have to go through to just go and like get a ticket and sit there. Like, it would take you like 5 hours to get out of the parking lot because they only have so many spots, and like there's one road going in and out that's like a mile long. And so like it was insane the day of. Like,
I'm sure it was unreal.
I have no idea.
Because it's like not just people, there's governments.
Yeah, dude. The people just flying in and landing on grass in a helicopter. It's just like, where are we right now? It's like, it was very crazy. But again, to back to your question about like the premiere and that whole experience and everything, it was very, very unique, and it almost went sideways. We actually were in a position where our video was not going to actually play at the event. They were going to scrap it, and they were going to replace it with another project because of whatever reason. But the story that we've heard is that the White House was working on a video of their own that they wanted to use to sort of introduce President Biden to come up on stage to give, his remarks. And so they had collaborated with a couple of different people, and they had sort of, worked on this to the degree that they had. And again, the story that I have is that our team, the ABMC folks, sent the White House our video, and they were like, yeah, we're going to play that one instead, which is just kind of like an insane thing to just hear. Like, they worked on their own, and they're like,
nah,
we're going to play yours instead. I don't know how like accurate that is, but that's what I've heard many times.
That would not surprise me if that's what happened.
I mean, their video was very cool, and to give them the credit that they definitely deserve, it was very like historical.
Did you get so you got a chance to see what they were going to post? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I did. Yeah. It's one of those things that like high production quality, motion graphics and like historical elements and movement. But I think one of the reasons why probably was because we had like live interviews with individuals in the audience on stage. So that was probably one big piece of it. And there was just like, to give these films the credit that they deserve, like they've had so much heart in them and feeling. And the other video just didn't really have any emotion. It was just like a historical retelling of what was happening. It was very cool. So I have no idea where that video is. I don't know if it'll ever come out, but I know for a fact that it was selected to be the one to sort of introduce President Biden on stage, which is insane.
Yeah.
Very cool thing to sort of experience. So that was like 3 days before the actual D-Day. And so we're like, okay, sweet. It's going to be there. It's going to be live. And so the day of the event was insane. We were up at like 3 a.m. to get in because all, these governments and important people are there. So the security is nuts. Somehow through the events, Luke and I end up in the VIP tent. Don't know how. We just ended up in the VIP tent. And so again, when you think about like the people that are coming to this, of course, you have people from government. You've got some higher ups. But there was a moment, and it's on my Instagram story, of just turning around and locking eyes with the one and only Steven Spielberg. And I was like, bumping Luke's shoulder. I was like, is that Steven Spielberg over there? And he's like, yeah. And Tom Hanks is right next to him. And I was like, holy crap, dude. Like, this is insane. And it made so much sense, of course, that they're there. And so just tons of different people from all different spheres were at this event because of just how massive and important it is to our history as a country, to the history of the world. Well,
and they did Band of Brothers and everything. I mean, so yeah.
Band of Brothers, Saving Private Ryan, of course these guys are here. And so now we're like, oh my gosh, not only is this video going to introduce the President of the United freaking States, Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg are maybe going to see it. We had no idea if they were going to be in the crowd. And so goes on, we walk up into our little, we're on the side skirts of the stage, and the event starts, and we see them sitting in the front row of the thing, and we're
they're
like,
gonna see it.
Gosh, like Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks are gonna see this video that we made. And so we're kind of like, as like little filmmaker boys, we're hyped about it. And so we're waiting, we're watching, and then before the video plays, we get like a, whatever they call it, like 7 jets just like flip over the whatever the audience, and it blows everybody's eardrums and their hats off, which is crazy. And then it gets like really quiet.
Wow.
And then it just starts playing on screen.
That'd be insane.
And it just like chills, dude, chills just thinking about it. And And it was at that point, I don't think I could say I had like a weird, like visceral experience, but I definitely was like emotional to just, I don't know if the word is pride. I think it's just like the word is like being, I just felt so honored to be a part of this day in whatever capacity that I was able to be a part of it. Just telling some of these stories and being able to hear just these stories on this scale where they definitely 100% deserved to be told, and that for me is like a memory that I will like never forget for sure. And I'm going to go get something real quick for you. This is a photo of Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg in the audience at DJ. Watch. I think my mom did this. My mom probably printed this out, and I will get a better picture of this for you. Just watching her films.
That is so cool.
So my mom is like texting me. She's like, Steven Spielberg is watching your thing. It's like, Mom, please.
You made it big.
I'm
you
with
made
my
it to the
friends.
big leagues.
Yeah, dude, made it big.
That's insane. Did you not know they were going to?
Jokes aside.
So you didn't know they were going to be there.
Crazy.
Tom Hanks or anything. Yeah.
No, man. I mean, again, like we didn't really even know that these were going to be played the way that they were until like a couple days before the actual event. And so we were just kind of like, it kind of was a benefit, I think, to not letting that get in our heads at all. Like while we were shooting these, while we were editing them even, like we didn't know, we didn't care. We were just like, these are the best way to do this. Nobody, what are you talking about? It doesn't matter. And so I don't know if we would have made any different decisions. We probably would have, some good, some bad. But not knowing that these were going to be like played probably like for the world to see, like,
well, you can look back at it as you did the best you could, because that was the goal and that's what you wanted to do, and it wasn't being hinged off of who was going to be there, who's not, or even how it was going to be played. And so I suppose in retrospect there's kind of a piece to that, like, you know what, we did the best we could and it turned out well, and you can be proud of that.
I mean, I doing what we do, like with the filmmaking stuff and even with the projects that we work on for like YouTube or social media, I think it's so easy if you want to have a presence like that online. You can get in your head really quickly about like, what are they going to think about this? Like, what is the audience? And like maximize that on the scale of 20,000 people or whatever. The people that you want to see this are going to see this. It just like, it's so easy to get it in your head that you're not going to make it good enough, or you start doubting, and your creativity in a lot of ways is hindered to a point where you're not actually benefiting the product that you're trying to make, and you're just turning it into this like mushy, you're not saying what you actually mean, and the reality is sometimes, knowing where things are going to go or who's going to see them sometimes just affect the way in which you make or what you cut, what you keep. And for me, as being somebody who has like a background in Christianity and faith, being able to work on a project that was going to display not religion, but just the human experience of forgiveness and like love at the scale of, World War II is just a very interesting thing to be a part of as well. And I think honestly, knowing if these were going to play the way that they were going to play, the influence of that could have gotten in all of our heads as the filmmakers to be like, maybe we should cut back on how much they're talking about forgiveness or, forgiving their enemies. Like one of the guys in their interviews, and you can watch it, he goes to a German cemetery whenever he's there in D-Day, for D-Day, or when he goes to Normandy. He goes to a German cemetery and he prays over the graves of some of the German boys.
Wow.
And one of the lines in the film that always like hits me hard is that, these boys were just doing what they were told to do. And we can keep them from having, of course, they're no longer here, but the the emotion of that continues on in our own hearts of love or hate. And we can choose to, keep them from whatever, or we can choose to forgive them. And that's what he says. He's like, and that's what I've chosen to do is forgive. And like having that just being something that I like personally, like absolutely stand behind and believe, having that just rocket ship out over the airwaves of every like news organization ever.
So that part of it was in that finale, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, there was just so much. There's just so much of those films that, outside of Christianity, outside of faith, there were pieces of it that just have this heartbeat of like forgiveness, have this heartbeat of, love. And I just can't understand on a human level, like how we were able to do that and like how we were able to get these to go the way that they did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that to some degree too is an aspect that, maybe the Lord kind of helped you not know how it was going to be shown, because it may, not that we want to alter things, but there that can happen. That thought can happen if we know who's going to be there or how it's going to be shown. And so, maybe that was all meant to be for that very reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
The Lord has a way of working in mysterious ways.
Absolutely,
and, that could have been one of them.
Yeah. I think, I can't describe it in a way. And I've thought that as well. And I'm fairly confident that, like I said, there was just these things couldn't have happened, like watching them again, like these projects, these videos, they couldn't have happened with our own creativity and like capability. It's just, there was absolutely just like an external hand and force of like, this is what I want you to do. Not to say that this is like scripture or whatever, but it's a very, very cool thing to sort of have confidence in that.
So kind of bringing it down, coming close to the end here, what would be just a couple bullet point things? The first being maybe some quick thought of something that you learned that you're like, hey, this is a piece of advice or something I learned through this whole process. And then maybe one thing you're like, this is what we did and it worked, but maybe we should have done something differently. Not necessarily like what you did wrong, but just a couple quick thoughts on something you feel like went well and it's worth sharing, something that could have been a little bit different. If you have something like that.
Yeah. I would say that a thing that I feel like we just should have done better is just really pushed on the planning side of things. I think we could have made these, I think they're great as they are. I think we could have made them a lot wider if we were able to sort of have the perspective, of course, that we have now of, what could we have done with an extra shoot day? What could we have done? Could we have filmed with their families? Could we have filmed, you know what I mean? Like just being able to expand the story a little bit, I think would have really benefited the emotional experience for audience members to sort of not just see them, but sort of see their families. The people that we did get to film with their families, like you really connect with them. We were able to film with some of them in Normandy. Their families were there. And you're just like, okay, these are real people, not just like in like a room. You know what I mean? Just being able to expand on those stories. I really wish, looking back on it, that we had the foresight to push on, getting an extra shoot day. And, there's like elements of that are completely outside of our control. Like we couldn't get more budget, so period. Like we can't film it. We can't do it anymore. Yeah. So
right. When you're locked into something like that,
we couldn't change it. It was just, it's one of those things that I certainly, if you find yourself in a place of doing this kind of a project where, history is at stake, like really make sure you're asking for advice or like, hey, should we shoot another day? Can we do that? Because I think like the people involved will probably go for it if they can understand how it might benefit the story, but not just the story, but who might see that story. And the other question you had was advice to other people or other filmmakers. or people who want to be filmmakers or are in that field. I'm not a very good advice giver. I really stink at telling people what they should and shouldn't do. But I think if I were to give somebody advice based off of this project, I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying about that perception of the audience, is do whatever you can to insulate yourself from a poisonous thinking process about the audience. Not to the point that it will hinder you from, if you're on a advertising campaign, the audience is pretty crucial for that. But I think there's a limit to what is helpful when you're considering what the audience is for a certain project. And I think for us, we really experienced that to where we could just make what we felt was the most compelling version of these stories that existed, no hindrances whatsoever. And that was what we made. And I think those stories benefit from that immensely. Chalk that up to them being the kinds of stories that they are. You do this with a McDonald's commercial, you might get fired. I don't know. So take this advice with a grain of salt. But that's piece. Maybe it's not advice. Maybe a piece of my experience from this that I'm going to sort of figure out how I can utilize in my own future projects is, that act of just making something without the fear or the concern of, 50,000 people are going to watch this. Shouldn't we change how this comes across? That just it can poison your mind to being oh my gosh, you're right. We should change this. And it just starts to negatively impact the impact, I think, of what that thing can actually have on the world. So,
yeah, it's just a good, healthy mental positioning, basically. In the focus and the direction you choose to look as you work through a project. I think it's great.
Yeah. Call it experience, not advice, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, advice comes from experience, or it should.
Yeah, I hope so.
And I think it's
That's
definitely
funny.
good advice from a very incredible experience that you had. Well, thanks for taking time to just talk about this whole project. I do appreciate it. It is an amazing set of films you guys did. The interviews look amazing. The B-roll's fantastic. As a team effort, you guys did a great job with it. Where can people go to watch these if they want to check them out? And also just let people know too where they can follow you and keep up with your adventures.
Totally, man. So all of these films are available on the American Battle Monuments Commission's YouTube page. We're a little far removed, so you might have to scroll a bit to find them. But then for me, I'm relatively active on YouTube here. My channel is M.A. Hartman. And then I'm on Instagram as well at Michael HRTMN4. That's where I usually post my life and, just trying to be a creative creator on this platform and give back to what has absolutely been an inspiration to be a filmmaker in the first place. So that's where I'm at. That's what I'm doing. Definitely go watch these films if you can. They're really cool. I'm really proud of those.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You should. Well, hey, thanks for taking time to be a part of this. I do appreciate it. And maybe we'll jump on another podcast sometime and talk about another project.
Happy to do it, brother. Just send an invite and I'll be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thank you.